So today we're looking at a really massive shift in how medicine is made.
A huge one.
And I don't just mean a new drug or a new pill. It's a billion-dollar bet that biology is just messy code.
Messy code that needs debugging. I think that's the perfect way to frame it.
Yeah. We're diving into that fireside chat from the J.P. Morgan Healthcare Conference, the one with NVIDIA's Jensen Huang and Eli Lilly CEO Dave Ricks.
Right, January 2026. And the big headline is this new AI co-innovation lab they're building.
In the San Francisco Bay Area, yeah. But this isn't just, a press release and handshake.
No, not at all. They're putting down $1 billion over 5 years. The mission here is to stop discovering drugs and start engineering them.
That distinction, that is the key. Dave Ricks had a quote that really, it stuck with me. He called current drug discovery artisanal work.
Which sounds lovely if you're buying, like, cheese or something.
Exactly.
But it's a terrible model if you're waiting for a cure.
Artisanal here means it's manual, it's slow, and it relies on that one eureka moment.
A moment of luck, basically. And the whole argument here is that if you treat biology like an engineering problem, you can strip out the luck.
You make it predictable. You make it reproducible.
And they need to. I mean, their first target is diseases of the aging brain. That's maybe the most complex biological system we know of. You can't rely on luck for that.
Okay, so let's get into the how. It's not just about, plugging in more servers. They describe this scientist-in-the-loop framework.
This is the really cool part. You have what's called the wet lab.
Your physical test tubes, actual biology.
Right. And then you have the dry lab, which is all the computational stuff, the AI.
And historically, those two were totally separate.
Completely siloed. You do the math, and weeks later, you go do the chemistry.
But in this new lab, they're building a continuous loop.
Exactly. It's recursive. The AI models, which are running on Lilly's NVIDIA DGX SuperPOD, they simulate millions of molecules digitally.
In silico, right.
Yeah.
The silicon chip version of in vitro.
Precisely. So the AI filters out all the likely failures before a single physical chemical is ever mixed. Then, the wet lab runs the experiment on only the most promising candidates.
And here's the kicker. The results from that physical experiment immediately get fed back into the AI model.
Making it smarter for the next cycle, it's a self-improving engine. Ricks called this the Holy Grail because it solves the biggest bottleneck in pharma, the time it takes to fail.
Speaking of time, we have to talk about the automation. The sources mentioned they're collaborating with Thermo Fisher and Multiply Labs.
Yeah, this is for the physical side of things. Ricks was very blunt about it. He said machines are made to work day and night.
So while the human scientists are at home sleeping, robotic systems are in the lab running the physical experiments the AI suggested.
The loop never stops. It's 247 discovery.
And it's not just Lilly. I think that's important context.
Oh, absolutely not. At that same conference, Jensen Huang was handing out these DGX Spark Awards.
Right, to other big players in the space, like Isomorphic.
The team behind AlphaFold and Recursion.
And when you see a name like Isomorphic, which basically solved the protein folding problem, this isn't just a quirky experiment.
No, this is the new industry standard taking shape. Huang said AI computing power has advanced 1 million-fold in just the last decade.
1 million-fold.
And he expects that to continue. When you apply that kind of exponential growth to biology, the timelines for medical breakthroughs, they just contract radically.
And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. We're all so used to hearing that a cure for something like Alzheimer's is,
decades away. It's always decades away.
Always. But that assumes a linear artisanal process. If discovery actually becomes an engineering discipline, predictable, scalable, automated,
then that timeline might not be linear anymore.
We might be moving from an age of scientific guessing to an age of biological manufacturing. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Keep exploring.
It's one of the weirdest things about AI right now. You can have a model that writes a beautiful poem or, passes the bar exam, but then you ask it to do something that seems simple, like log into your company's system and rename a few files. And it just completely falls flat on its face.
It's that classic gap between general knowledge and specific practical agency. Knowing facts is one thing. Actually navigating a messy, real-world workflow with multiple steps, that's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. And that's really the core of what we're digging into today. We've got this fascinating paper from Amazon Science, just out this month, January 2026. And they're making a pretty big claim that they've found a way to, to bridge that gap, specifically for what they call asynchronous multi-turn agents.
Right. And without needing some giant new model or spending a fortune on human trainers. The numbers are really what jumped out at me. I mean, they took a base model that was succeeding, what, maybe 39% of the time,
Mediocre success rate for sure.
and they cranked it all the way up to 72%.
Which, as we'll get to, puts it ahead of some very, very expensive proprietary models. But okay, before we get to the results, let's unpack the how. Normally, if you want an AI to get good at an internal tool, you do supervised fine-tuning, right? You'd feed it, I don't know, thousands of perfect examples of a human doing the task.
Right, which is slow and expensive. And frankly, humans aren't always perfect. So these researchers, they flipped that idea. They use reinforcement learning, or RL, but the key was the feedback mechanism. They call it verifiable environment-based feedback.
So instead of a human teacher grading the AI's homework,
The environment itself does the grading.
it either worked or it didn't.
Precisely. They tested this on 2 platforms. One was AppWorld. Think of it like a simulator for a personal assistant. And the other was something they call a deep search agent, which is basically an agentic RE setup.
And just to clarify that for everyone, agentic RE means the AI isn't just pulling up a document, it's actively planning how to search, querying different places, and then, putting it all together.
Correct. And here's the clever part. They used what's called a sparse reward. The AI does all its work, goes through all the steps, and it only gets a reward signal, a thumbs up or thumbs down, at the very, very end.
So did the code actually run? Did the file actually move?
Exactly, it's binary. And because that feedback is so objective, you don't need a human in the loop. You just need a simulator that can say yes or no.
Okay, let's get into the aha example from the paper, because this really shows the difference between just guessing and actual reasoning. The task was, add date prefixes to files and move non-current year files to the recycle bin.
It sounds so simple to a person, but for an agent, that's a minefield. It took, I think, 32 separate API calls to get it done. You have to authenticate, list the files, parse the dates, loop through everything.
And at one point, the agent just hits a wall. It tries to call a function, rename file. But the API says error because that function doesn't actually exist.
And this is where a normal model would probably just, hallucinate, it pretend it worked and fail the whole task. But this RL-trained agent, it stopped. It recognized the error was real. It then checked the available tools again and figured out, okay, I can use the move file function to do the same thing.
That's the behavioral change that I found so incredible. It wasn't just following a script, it was problem solving. It learned to check the documentation before writing code.
Like a good junior developer,
Right.
It learned a strategy, not just a solution. It learned to verify its assumptions before it acted.
So let's talk about the economics, because this has huge implications.
Yeah.
They used Qwen 2.532B as the base model, which is, a good open source model, but it's not the biggest one out there.
Not by a long shot. But after this RL training, it hit that 72% success rate on AppWorld. And for comparison, some of the big proprietary models like Sonnet 3.7 and 4.0 were stuck around 69%.
So a smartly tuned open model actually beat the giants.
Handily. And here's the real kicker. They did it with just 72 training examples.
Wait, 72? You don't mean 72,000?
No. Just 72. That's it. Because that feedback signal is so clear pass or fail, the model learned incredibly fast. The cost was something like 1 to 2% of what traditional fine-tuning would cost.
That just completely changes the game for any company trying to automate internal workflows. But there has to be a limit, right? Did this work on the really small models?
And that's where they did hit a wall. They tried it on a smaller 3 billion parameter model. And it got a little better, but it ran into what the paper calls reasoning walls.
Meaning it didn't have the horsepower to understand the problem.
Pretty much. Specifically, it couldn't figure out when a question was unanswerable. If a task was impossible, the little model would just make something up, and no amount of RL training can fix that kind of fundamental gap in comprehension.
So baseline size still matters for, common sense. But for these mid-size models, this is a real sweet spot. And they also found that giving it harder problems first helped it learn faster, didn't they?
Yes, a kind of curriculum learning. By throwing it in the deep end, it was forced to develop those robust error-checking habits much more quickly.
It's just a fascinating shift in thinking. We're going from a world of just feed the model more data to give the model better practice.
Absolutely. It kind of democratizes this high-end performance. And if you have an environment where you can verify success or failure, like a code compiler, you can train a specialist model to outperform a generalist giant.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. The study showed these RL agents learned to self-correct, to check their own assumptions, much better than the base models they started from. So if AI is starting to fix its own bad habits through practice, how long before a customized agent like this becomes more reliable than the human giving it the instructions in the first place?
That's the question, isn't it? And we're going to have to answer it pretty soon.
Something to think about. Thanks for tuning into this deep dive. We'll see you on the next one. You know that feeling you get in a dream where you're talking to your friend, you turn away for a second, look back, and suddenly your friend is, I don't know, a movie star.
Or a potted plant.
Or a potted plant, exactly. That disorienting logic problem.
Yeah.
That's basically been the state of AI video for, what, the last couple of years?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But the continuity is just, it's a fever dream.
Absolutely. But we're looking at a blog post today from Google DeepMind that seems to suggest that era is coming to an end. This is about their Veo 3.1 update.
Right, from Ricky Wong at DeepMind. And the mission here seems to be about graduating AI video from just making these random cool clips to, well, to being a controllable storytelling tool.
That's the core idea. The new feature is called Ingredients to Video, and the whole point is moving past just hoping you get lucky with a prompt.
Ingredients to video. I mean, it sounds like one of those meal delivery kits. So what are the actual ingredients we're talking about?
It's really a shift in the workflow. So instead of just typing a prompt and crossing your fingers, you can feed the model specific reference images.
Okay.
An image for a character, for a prop, a certain visual style. And Veo is meant to assemble them into a coherent video.
But hold on, we've had image to video before. I get a picture of a cat, it makes the cat run around. How is this actually different from what we had 6 months ago?
The big leap, the technical term they're using is identity consistency.
Identity consistency.
Exactly. So in the old models, you try to put that cat on the moon, and the AI might keep the breed, but maybe the fur pattern changes. Or worse, the cat slowly morphs into a dog.
Right, that weird shimmer effect where things just dissolve.
Or just straight up hallucination. Veo 3.1 is designed to lock on to that identity. You can take a specific character, same face, same outfit, and put them in a cafe, then a jungle, then on a spaceship, and it's still them.
That is the difference between making, I don't know, a funny GIF and actually making a movie.
It is. If you can't keep your lead actor looking like your lead actor from shot to shot, you don't have a narrative.
So it's not just the character. Does it work for other things?
Oh yeah, it extends to the background, to textures. You can say, use this character, but render them in this specific painterly style, or keep the layout of this room exactly the same. It blends all these disparate elements together.
You know, speaking of the ingredients, I was looking through the notes on how you're supposed to create these source images, and I honestly thought it was a joke. Did you see the model name?
I did, yes. You're talking about Nano Banana Pro.
Nano. Banana. Pro. Is that a real industry term we're using now?
It's the internal brand for their Gemini 3 Pro image model. It's a little silly, yeah. But it highlights a specific tool built to generate those consistent source images that Veo then animates.
So you use Nano Banana to cast your actor, and then Veo is the camera crew.
That's a good way to put it.
But where is this movie supposed to be seen? Because looking at the output specs, it seems like Google is really focused on the phone screen, not the big screen.
That's a really key observation. They've rolled out native vertical output, so 9.16 aspect ratio.
Which, a lot of the time, just means they chop the sides off a normal video.
Not here. The model is actually generating the scene for that vertical frame. It composes the action for a phone, for a YouTube short. It's a huge nod to where most video is actually watched now.
But that feels a bit limiting for serious creator, right?
Hmm.
If I want to make something cinematic, am I stuck with a vertical format?
No, and this is where the tool kind of forks. For the casual user in the Gemini app, it's all mobile first. But for the pro workflows, we're talking Flow, Vertex AI, the Gemini API, they've added upscaling to 1080p and even 4K.
Oh, okay.
So you get this split. Fast, easy vertical content for socials, and high-res 4K footage for production studios.
Right. So quality is going up, consistency is there. Which brings up the trust issue. If I can create a photorealistic person and put them in any situation consistently, how do we know it's real?
Google's answer to that is Synthi.
The digital watermark.
Exactly. It's an imperceptible watermark that's baked right into the pixels of the video. Your eye can't see it, but a verification tool like the one in the Gemini app can scan it and confirm this was made with Google AI.
So there's a safety rail, even if our eyes can be fooled.
It's a necessary step, especially as these tools get into everyone's hands.
That really is the main takeaway here, is that in one update, we've gone from tech demo to a genuine storytelling tool.
It is, and it leaves you with this kind of provocative thought, if you can control characters, consistency, and resolution all from your phone. What's the real difference between a mobile creator and a filmmaker anymore?
I think we're about to find out. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. So, today we're diving into what feels like a real pivot point in medical AI. We've seen models that can read an X-ray for a while now.
For a while, yeah. But this is different.
This is very different. On January 13th, 2026, Google Research released something that, well, it fundamentally changes the geometry of the problem.
Literally changes the geometry. We're talking about moving from flat 2D snapshots to full 3D volumetric understanding.
Exactly. We're looking at two new open models today. There's
Mhm.
MedGemma 1.5 for the images and text, and MedASR for speech.
Right.
And the mission for this deep dive is, I think, pretty clear. How do you get an AI to see inside a body in 3 dimensions and hear complex medical jargon, all without needing a giant server farm to run it?
And that last part is the kicker, the offline capability. That's the game changer.
Okay, let's start with the visual side then, MedGemma 1.5. The big leap from the last version seems to be this ability to ingest high-dimensional volumes.
It is. We're talking CT scans, MRIs, even whole slide histopathology.
So we're not just looking at a photo of a lung anymore, we're looking through it.
Precisely. Think about how a radiologist actually works. They don't just look at one slice of a CT scan.
No, they scroll through the whole...
Yeah, scroll through the whole volume, to understand the shape and extent of a tumor or an issue. MedGemma is now doing that kind of analysis across the entire volume.
And the performance jump is pretty significant. I saw they clocked a 14% improvement in classifying disease-related findings in MRIs.
Which is great, but what really jumped out at me was the longitudinal stuff, the time travel aspect, as you called it before we started.
Right, for tracking disease progression.
It's vital. The model can now look at a series of chest x-rays taken over months and spot what's changed. It got a 5% accuracy boost there.
Which is good, but the next number is the one that really caught my eye.
The localization.
A 35% improvement in its ability to pinpoint exactly where the problem is?
Yeah.
That's huge.
It's the difference between there might be an issue here and the issue is right here.
But here's the thing that I think might confuse some people. It's a 4B model. 4 billion parameters.
Mm-hmm.
In today's world of 100 billion parameter models, that sounds, well, it sounds tiny. We usually think smaller means less capable.
And in this context, that's not the case. Here, smaller means specialized and efficient.
Okay.
By keeping it at 4B, they've made a model that can run on local hardware. You don't need to send that sensitive patient MRI data up to the cloud.
Which is a massive privacy and security hurdle for hospitals, just gone.
Exactly.
So we have a model that can see better. But so much of medical data isn't pixels, it's a doctor dictating notes. That brings us to MedASR.
The other half of the puzzle. General speech models, even the really, really good ones, they just stumble over medical vernacular.
You mumble a complex drug name and it hears something completely different.
It hallucinates a common word that sounds similar, yeah. And the stakes are obviously a bit higher than getting your grocery list wrong.
I saw they benchmarked MedASR against Whisper Large V3, which is, pretty much the industry standard.
And the gap was enormous. On medical dictation tasks, MedASR had 82% fewer errors.
82%, that's not just a marginal gain.
No, that's the difference between a tool that's helpful and a tool that's a liability. It allows a doctor to speak naturally, use all the acronyms and jargon.
And the model just gets it. And can even use that text to prompt MedGemma to look at the scan.
Now you're connecting the whole workflow, the verbal to the visual.
And this isn't all just theoretical. I was glad to see they included some real-world deployments. In Malaysia and Taiwan,
the Malaysia example from QMed Asia is a perfect use case. They built an interface, Ask CTG.
Right.
It ingested over 150 clinical practice guidelines. So a doctor can just ask a question instead of flipping through a huge PDF manual to get decision support.
And in Taiwan, the National Health Insurance Administration used it for data extraction from, 30,000 pathology reports?
30,000. To evaluate preoperative assessments for lung cancer surgery, that's just a massive unstructured data problem that it helped solve.
It really shows that this foundation model approach is working. They aren't trying to ship a robo-doctor.
No, they're releasing the clay. They're releasing MedGemma and MedASR and letting developers, hospitals, and researchers be the sculptors.
They're even putting money behind it with that $100,000 Kaggle challenge. But we should be really clear, for anyone listening, you don't just download this and let it start making diagnoses.
Oh, absolutely not. No, these are tools for validation, for assistance. They are powerful, but they are still just tools that have to be validated in every specific use case.
Okay, so that leads me to my final thought for you to take away. If these models are now small enough to run offline on, say, a rugged laptop,
Right.
but also smart enough to read 3D MRIs and understand a specialist's dictation, how close are we really to deploying this kind of expert-level diagnostic assistant in a remote clinic with no internet connection at all?
The technological gap is closing fast. I think now it's just becoming an implementation gap.
Thanks for diving in with us.